I don't hate Paris Hilton. Stars Are Blind is not that bad of a song.
What a pick for that role.
Stars Are Blind.
Edgy for edgy's sake.
That's perfect. Edgy for edgy's sake.
Stars Are Blind. I don't know. She's fucking weird. Stars Are Blind.
You're fucking lying.
Welcome to the Yestalgia podcast. I'm Basil.
I'm Drew.
And I'm Amanda.
And today we will be talking about Repo, the genetic opera. Quick synopsis. In the mid-21st century, an epidemic of organ failures leads to the rise of GeneCo, a company leasing organ transplants, and those who miss a payment get a repossession from the Repo Man. Meanwhile, sick teen Shiloh seeks answers about her late mother and the blood disorder she passed on to her. And that's what we'll be talking about. First thing, we're going to talk about what our experiences are previous to watching for this podcast with Repo. Drew, would you like to go first?
Yes. Let me first say, this was my choice, and I am so sorry to you two. Your choices were so great and everything. Anyway, I seen this movie twice, I think, right when it came out, and then a little bit after. So I think I'm more nostalgic.
Is this a third time?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm more nostalgic for that time of my life than the movie itself. Because I was, 17, as people say, feeling myself and everything. And
Don't make any excuse. Do not apologize.
and I was...
Yeah, you do not have to apologize, especially if you were 17.
Yeah. At the most, I guess, emo, you might say, time of my life.
What year did this movie?
2008, I believe.
Yep.
I just wanted that to be on the record.
Amanda, would you like to go next?
I don't have any experience with this movie. I have no exposure to it. I had no idea that it even existed. I had never even heard it mentioned until it was suggested by my good friend, Drew, who is my friend.
Oh, no.
Still?
I'll talk a little bit about something like that in a second. However, I think I actually have the most exposure to Repo in that the first time I saw it was... So basically, the film was not doing great, I think, at the outset, and they did not have great marketing. So they kind of collaborators, mostly Terrence Zdunich and Darren Lynn Bousman, were going on a tour showing the film, and they would be there and they would sign autographs and answer questions and stuff like that. And so I had two friends that were going to see it, and they were like, hey, do you and your, well, then it was my boyfriend, now it is my husband, want to go see this? And I looked at a bunch of clips online, and I decided to dress up as Shiloh, and we went to that screening, and I really liked the movie at the time as well. I was also an emo kid, even though I was a bit older than you, Drew. And they made a joke at one point at the end about Terrence giving people reach arounds. So when I finally got up, I asked if I could get a reach around, and he was like, what?
Oh, no.
I guess. And he's like, what do you want exactly, though? Because he thought it was funny, which it was meant to be. And at the time, I thought it was funny. And I still do kind of think it's funny. But realistically, we posed in a way where it kind of looks like he's fucking me from behind.
What a dude.
I mean, I asked for that picture specifically. So it's still up on my Facebook. If you are Facebook friends with me, you can go find it. And yeah, I watched it several times afterwards because at the time I was a big fan. So that's my relationship to Repo.
Huh.
Yeah. I haven't watched it in many years at this point, and I will say I don't think I'm a fan now.
Yeah, neither am I.
Yeah. Would we like to get into it? Does anybody have anything they want to start off on?
I will say, I don't know who cares about this, but I think Terrence, at least with the makeup and everything, kind of looks like Matt Mercer.
Which one is Terrence?
The Grave Robber.
Grave Robber.
Okay.
Yeah, he, I believe, did a lot of the writing and creating. And, I looked at a few interviews. I actually did less research than I normally do, honestly. But it was an off-Broadway play for a bit of time. And I've seen at least one interview in which Terrence Zdunich was very particular about how it's an opera and not a musical, which, like, to be honest, not that different. It's a rock opera, quote unquote.
I had trouble with that. And let me just ask.
Yeah.
I don't suppose I've seen billions of musicals. I don't suppose I've ever seen a quote unquote opera before, like in any way, shape, or form. I don't think I have. Are operas supposed to be kind of loosey goosey lyrically? Like,
what do you mean by that?
The amount of, oh man, I'm not sure I'm ready to pop the fuck off just yet, but the amount of kind of rhymes and the amount of speak talking, it took me aback a little bit. But like this is going to sound fucking bonkers, but the thing that disturbed me the most about this, if anyone listening has never ever seen it, this absolutely gory, like hot ass mess was the ill-fitting lyrics, the ill-timed lyrics, the awkward writing, and the subpar vocal work. Now, this all could be, I don't want to say the fault, but this could be attributed to the actors. This could be attributed to bad editing. I was just sort of like, this seems very, very unpolished.
I think it's like, I don't think you're wrong about anything you just said, really. I will say, though, to your earlier point about opera, not necessarily I don't know a ton about opera, but I do know they have a thing, and I forget what it's called, but it has to do with, because opera is supposed to be all singing, they do have like a sing-talking type thing that they do in opera.
So that is a thing that I should have expected.
Not necessarily, because I think going into it, like, you would assume it's a musical.
I want to give this movie as much the benefit of the doubt as I can, because I will say, I watched Clueless in like 17 different disjointed parts and pieces. It was hard for me to watch just because I couldn't find the time. I kind of had the same problem with this movie. I watched the first, I think like 15 minutes of it on Monday, I want to say it was. And then I didn't get to watch the rest of it until yesterday, and I had to watch the tail end of it today. So from Monday until Thursday, I had only seen the very first 15 minutes. I actually literally remember the point where I stopped watching was when the grave robber was bashing some door in with a cadaver's head. I had to hit pause. So from Monday to Thursday, I was like, holy shit, Pikachu. What have I gotten myself into? But however, I will say, when I watched the end of the movie, I was like, okay, I'm not as mad. Like I'm not saying I'm going to get it. I don't say I get the movie, but my understanding is a little bit more complete. Like at first I thought that this movie was taking itself completely seriously. And the more I watched, the more I was like, I think I'm supposed to chill out a little bit.
Yeah, I feel like this is another one that you just kind of, if you're trying to take it too seriously, you're not going to have a great experience. Once I realized and remembered it's not like fully serious, it started getting better.
The appearance of Bill Moseley's character really, like, the light bulb went off and I was like, okay, I understand now. I mean, sort of.
Yeah.
I understand more.
So I do think, even though you are not supposed to take it seriously, really, like, because I believe that the implication at one point was that it is meant to be kind of Rocky Horror-ish. But even saying that, the film is really messy in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Like, it could use a lot of polish, because I think there are some interesting ideas. And to say you're not supposed to take it seriously would be one thing, except like, this reminds me of when you are in your teen years, maybe even like first in college, and you're just learning about stuff, but you just don't know enough about it to really be speaking about it. And yet you're talking about it a lot. And it felt like that is the case, like with this movie, that it does want to say something. It just, and I don't know any other way to put this, it's too stupid to know how to do it. Sorry. So mean, but like,
I mean, I, as a person who's not creative at all, don't like to down other people's creativity, but this, it's rough.
It's messy. Like, that's the thing. And because it wants to say things, and it wants to say so many things, it can't really focus on them, I find. At least not enough. Yeah, I don't think it can focus enough to give these ideas enough attention and enough like nuance and enough thought, because there's so much it feels like they are trying to talk about. Even if there was one subject or theme you wanted to talk about, there is likely many things you could talk about in your movie or explore in your film, but you probably shouldn't choose all of them. And it seems like that's what they were doing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
They were shooting for the stars when they only had enough fuel to get to the upper atmosphere.
Who, Paul Sorvino?
Yeah. Well, you talked a little bit about the musical talent or musical ability.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it is so varied that it is also kind of funny, because I don't know if either of you know much about Sarah Brightman, but she was the original Christine Daae for Phantom of the Opera, because she is
I felt sorry for her.
it was, I'm sure, like an easy job for her, honestly, because she is clearly the best singer of all of them, like miles ahead of everybody. And then there's others.
Quite interesting.
I guess that's why she was the singer in this, because she's the best singer.
For sure. But it is on an entirely sung film. And
Yeah.
some of these people are, you know, clearly new to singing.
I wonder if Paul knew that when he signed up. So we know.
I felt sorry for him too.
Yeah. But here's the other thing. It doesn't seem like it's just about the technical skill of the singing. It's almost like
They should have had a better editing team, because even in a music, you expect perfection because you have an editing team behind you.
why didn't you try another take, man? Like,
That could have been done better. Just cut. Try this again.
right? And there's a lot of that with, I think, the singing, because like sometimes it's real bad.
It's incredibly bad. And I will tell you this, it's bad in a way that is, the word I want to use is catchy, but that implies positivity. It's catchy in the way that Baby Shark do 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 is catchy. When like after, I want to say, I think it was Thursday, after I had watched the majority of that movie, even like my inner voice had taken on this weird talk singing opera-esque, or at least Repo-esque sort of inflection. I was like, I have forgotten to take my buspirone, like random shit like that. I was just thinking in that weird sort of like off-key nonsense.
Syncopated. Yeah.
Yes. It was not catchy, infectious. There we go.
Yeah. Well, and to be fair, it's not like there is zero talent here, right? Like in the songwriting or in the lyrics or in the singing, right? But yeah, like it seems like
I can't completely shit on this movie. Drew?
Yeah.
I knew, I was like, okay, this is not going to be a regular movie and everything. As soon as I was reminded that one of the main side characters, the daughter,
Amber Sweet.
Yeah, Amber Sweet is played by Paris Hilton. I was like, okay.
Hey, Stars Are Blind is not that bad of a song. I'm just going to say it. I don't hate Paris Hilton.
One of the bad questions.
She is one of the better people, and it's surprising.
This almost seems like a problem.
It
One of the
is.
best singers and stars is Paris Hilton.
Yeah.
In your movie.
In particular, of the like three siblings, she is the best. She's the best singer and the best actress of the three of them, which insane.
They expected us to believe in a world where Paris Hilton is the sibling to Bill Moseley.
Yep.
Which I found
An
very
ogre.
Yes. Well, I believed more. It's hard to tell because I don't know what that guy looks like, and I don't know what he does in any other films. I think he's a singer, right?
I believe so. I wish I could tell you anything more about that.
He's in a band called Skinny Puppy. Have I got the right guy?
Yeah, I think it is the right guy.
Okay. And even he didn't get a whole lot of lines or verses, but
Oh yeah, he's also a lot older than her, I think.
it was difficult to tell because the character has this human flesh face stuck over his regular face. And I'm assuming that his face has been cut off. You don't really see him without his weird human skin masks. I hope I'm selling this movie for people.
I'm like, in this near future where they do all these transplants and stuff, he couldn't get a proper stitched on face.
It almost seemed like it was a choice. Like it was a...
It's on purpose, I think, because Amber later on her face gets all fucked up from another surgery. And she has one that is done like fairly nicely. It obviously falls off. So
Right.
not that nicely, but still like looks much better.
That. Why? They're the big company that does that stuff. And liquid stitches are a thing now. They were a thing then.
Yeah. I think the idea is that he has something so that he can change out his faces was sort of like.
That's what I got.
Yeah. Does that make it good? No.
And the fact that he thinks he looks good. Just because the pasted on face itself looks pristine, nice and stuff. The look around it does not. So, dude.
Yeah. I'm going to be honest. It seems like there's a lot of things that are put in here to be kind of edgy, you know, and I think that's a detriment, right? Like, I love dark subject matter in general, but like, I think it needs some more thought.
Yeah. Edgy for edgy's sake is not good.
Yeah.
That's what this whole movie was. That's perfect. Edgy for edgy's sake. That's the perfect way to describe this movie. It feels like whoever wrote / directed this movie was in his 17-year-old daughter's, or hell, 15-year-old daughter's diaries and journals and fan fictions. And he was like, ooh, this is good shit.
A little bit, yeah.
But like, there was no way an adult wrote this.
But, more than one adult wrote it. I'll say, like...
That's the problem. The fact that there were two writers. They were like, one was saying an idea, like, other one was like, hey, yeah, that's good. We should put that in.
They were egging each other on.
Yeah.
And there wasn't somebody there that was reasonable. Yeah. It should be like, that's not a good idea, guys.
Right.
And yeah, like that's what a lot of the choices are like. There's a lot that is just could have really been improved with editing. Different kinds of editing too, right? Like editing the songs, editing the
vocal track.
Yes. Editing just like the script altogether, like in general, parsing things out. It's not even a long movie. And yet there is a lot of extraneous stuff that's like not necessary. I believe Darren Lynn Bousman went on to direct a few of the Saw movies as well.
As a matter of fact, when I saw the Saw word, like the cover art, I forgot the name of this movie. Right before I watched it, I had to Google, what term did I use? I used weird rock opera. Those were the 3 words I gave to Google. And it immediately was like, oh, you want this one? And I was like, thank you, Google. Hate you. But I saw that it said from the whatever of Saw, I guess director. And so I was like, oh no, I'm going to take psychic damage from this film, which I did, but not quite in the same way that I did from the Saw movies. I find it very difficult to talk about this movie without referencing other pieces of media. And I'll try not to speak on these other pieces of media in too great a detail because this is about Repo, the genetic opera. Thank you. Took me a minute to get there. So have you guys ever seen the movie Idiocracy?
Yeah.
I have. I stole it from a friend of mine and never gave it back. Well, I didn't steal it. They loaned it to me and I still have it.
It's on Comedy Central.
Okay. So I can't watch that movie. Not because it's bad. It's supposed to be funny. Like that movie gives you every single indication. It's like, this movie is marketed for comedy. You will laugh at this movie. It makes no mystery. Unlike Repo, the genetic opera, where I was like, am I supposed to find this funny? Because I can't fucking tell. However, the parallel there is that I find it difficult to watch Idiocracy because it hits too close to home. It's too real of a vision where they're, watering their crops with Gatorade. And that's why there's famine. And Terry Crews is the beautiful, beautiful president. And he's just a fucking idiot. It was supposed to be funny to people, just like Repo, genetic rocking A. This movie was supposed to be like, look at this whimsy. Isn't this absurd? But I was like, I don't know. I don't disbelieve it. I guess that's me being cynical.
I mean, in my notes, it's written, I believe. I can't find it, but I remember thinking it. Oh, grave robber, what a little imp, but like sarcastic.
Right. Like I watched them stealing these drugs, which there's even more questions regarding these glowing blue drugs. And I'm like, okay, I get it. I'd be hooked on some shit too in this horrible world that doesn't really seem too much different on paper, like in black and white, than
some stuff now.
Yeah. What me and my pessimism is that So I couldn't find, like, I knew there was supposed to be some sort of like absurdity and like whimsy in this, and I couldn't find it. It was falling flat on that for me, but I think that's me and not the movie.
No, I think it's the movie. I think it's not, like I said, it wants to speak about certain topics, right? But it just doesn't know enough about them, or like doesn't understand a lot of the nuance behind it, or like, I kind of wrote this near the end of my notes at one point when I was like nearing the end. It doesn't have any compassion, it feels like, for the things it wants to talk about either. So like, why are you even saying anything? I guess like, because it's clearly there is a big thing about class disparity, right? And even in the time when it came out, I mean, I was going to say it wasn't that bad, but the recession hadn't happened by the time it had come out. The 2008 recession. So that wasn't a thing. You know, the things that are happening now are not a thing. And they are, yeah, now actually very reminiscent of that. But I don't think it's because the writers had an insight about where our country was going, if I'm being perfectly honest. And I also think like, we've talked about this before, because I'm an old lady now. I put the captions on for like everything. And something I don't think I ever caught because I didn't have the captions on, so it was like kind of hard to even hear, is that at the very beginning, they're talking about voting on, there are screens kind of going by with, it sounds like news reporters. They don't show anybody, but they are saying things about voting on whether or not to make organ repossession illegal. And of course, there's somebody who's on the side of being like, no, they should stay legal, because if they couldn't repossess them, then they couldn't give them to so many people. And it's like, it felt so familiar, where it's like somebody arguing about something that is clearly very evil and pretending that it's a good thing.
Yeah. It hurt more than I could find fun in it. I was just sort of like, oh, I'm moving my nose in it. And that's sort of how I felt with Idiocracy too, which I believe is an even older movie.
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah.
But I mean, the other thing is like, I think that you can do those kinds of things in a way that is thoughtful and, again, compassionate about it. And it is neither of those things. It's almost like it's just a backdrop instead of like saying anything about it.
I think it's pretty clear that the messaging is messy.
So that's like one of the main things. But there's also like other things about like addiction, right? But like, again, has no compassion for addicts, it seems like.
They skipped right on over that, I feel like. So here's a bitch of mine about this movie. When they did the whole scene with Paris Hilton getting her crotch shot from the dude, I was so confused. I was like, are they addicted to the glowing blue shit? Or are they addicted to getting surgery? I do not understand. And also, why isn't anesthesia a thing that is extant in this world?
So I think it's both. The addictions are supposed to be both, which the fact that they chose it to be both is another problem, because it makes it have two things that are vastly different. Like, somebody addicted to surgery likely has some sort of body dysmorphia. And if you wanted to talk about things like that and about the way like people are seen in media, that's one thing. If you want to talk about addiction and addiction after like a doctor gives you a prescription, that's an entirely different thing.
Again, chemical addiction is a completely different thing than a psychological addiction. And they tried to conflate the two, and it confused me. And also, yeah, I was sort of like, don't use, I don't know.
It's like an edgy backdrop. It thinks addiction is a cute, funny way to have an edgy backdrop. Or like, you know, because it has like no nuance. It seems to think that like all these things are edgy and transgressive and subversive that it's doing, and it's not. Objectifying women is not edgy or subversive. In fact, it is fucking the status quo. Like, the whole movie made me kind of mad, because it was like, it made it like, ooh, look at these poor streets and these sex workers and these people who are addicted. It's edgy and cool. And it's like, what? Come on.
Look at these nasty boys and these nasty girls out here shaking their asses for this glowing blue shit that's sucked out of a corpse's nose. And also, you can get shot for juicing the corpse. It was buck wild. It was a ride from beginning to end. Drew, we love you, and we never let you go.
We'll still be your friend.
You get so much to talk about. This was just an explosive vein of commentary. I felt like with Clueless, I was just sort of like, But with this, I was like, I can't watch this at work. I'll get fired.
The thing is, it talks about certain things as if they were moral failings, right? Like one of the Largo brothers, I forget which one, is like very violent and keeps killing people.
Luigi.
And the other one keeps Luigi, yeah. And Pavi is the other one. He keeps stealing people's faces. And they equate that as the same thing as Amber being addicted to surgery and drugs. And I'm like, the other two things are harmful to other people and maybe considered a moral failing. I feel bad for Amber. Like, I don't consider any of the things that are going on with her a moral failing. She clearly does not like the way she looks and consistently wants to change it. And then she's addicted to drugs because of all the surgery, right?
Her dad is just like, blah, you disgust me. You're heinous. I hate you. He says that to all three of them.
Yeah.
But to her, I was just sort of like, God damn, Dad. The other two, I don't know what to do with, but she just wanted to be like cute and liked. Like, fuck her.
Yeah. And they act like killing people because you are so angry and getting away with it because you're rich is the same thing as constantly changing your appearance and being addicted to drugs, as if these are on par as the same thing. They're not. Speaking of the objectifying women isn't transgressive in any way. Man, did they do that to everyone? No one is spared except maybe Mag, sort of.
Did they do it to the little girl? To Shiloh?
Okay, she sings a song about how she's 17 while she's wearing a shirt where her boobs are about to fall out because it's cut so low on the side.
My resolution.
She's got side boob in that fucking shirt and is singing about how she's 17. So.
Do you know what I thought during this movie? They brought Carmen into this.
Who?
From Spy Kids.
Oh, because she was in Spy Kids, yes. Sorry, I was a little old to watch Spy Kids, but I do know she was in it.
That was her?
Yes.
I'm all shocked like I've ever seen that movie, but still, I thought that she was very cute. Like in Repo, I thought she was a cute character. I didn't really, I'm not saying that it didn't happen, but I must not have caught that part. I remember the part where she's dancing around the room because I thought to myself, oh God, make this end. Someone please take my life. And then it turned out to be like a split-second fantasy, and that made it all better to me. I just remember her being very cute and very, very like aesthetically good for that role.
Yeah, like a cute, spooky girl.
Like a cute, spooky, kind of like brat. But there's a reason why. But yeah, I didn't know she was Spy Kids.
Yeah. So one of the things you said is part of the thing, and something I have a problem with a little bit with operas, I think in general a little bit, because in a musical, I feel like it's a lot more obvious what is diegetic and what is not. And I think it's a little bit harder with an opera since everyone is singing all the time, right? So you have a musical where only sometimes people break out into song. And you have to understand, like when you're watching a musical, oh, these things are not happening, right? It's pretty obvious because now everyone's singing. Does that make sense?
The Flight of Fancy sequence has a clear start and end.
Yeah. Or at least a lot of it does. Because sometimes going into the song, it's a little harder to tell. But like if it's always being sung, it's harder to tell when something is diegetic or not. If you don't know, diegetic means happening in real life.
Yeah.
Just in case anyone who is listening does not know what that means. Yeah.
I just assumed correctly.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm really into musicals. And that's the other thing where them insisting it's not a musical makes me kind of mad. It's like, there's nothing wrong with musicals. Musicals are great.
It's another layer to the whole I'm not like other movies onion.
Why is the contrast so high? It looks like a fucking MySpace emo kid pic. Like a profile pic. For real. It's like another thing where it's like somebody should have been like, this is not a good idea.
Yeah. Did they not have an editor at all?
I don't know. And if they did, they were terrible at their job.
They better not say their name.
What was their budget?
Yeah, I think I'd like to move on. Well, also, I want to say that special effects aged like milk. Yeah. Okay, here's another problem I had. The comic sequences. I don't have a problem with the fact that you are giving us exposition in comic sequences, right? Like, I don't think that's necessarily a problem, especially if you have like a bunch of information, because it is faster for people to read than for something to be spoken out loud. Fine. But about 75% of them told you the information and had a whole scene exactly like the comic a second later. Why then? Why was it there?
I did the same thing.
Yeah. Because like, and even the first one where they sort of talk about like the world itself, they talk about throughout the movie anyways. So you don't need that first comic. You don't need any of the ones about Shiloh's mom because they always get shown immediately after. It doesn't make any sense that they're in there. Like, they look great. They are very like stylistically correct, but they're unnecessary.
That's what I was saying with the two of them egging each other on.
Right. And it's like, I think all the ideas, it's like, these are not necessarily bad ideas. They're just not well thought out, you know?
I don't think Zack Snyder would have done with this movie.
God damn you. Made it longer.
And even darker.
I think he could have made this movie. Okay. Could he make it worse?
I mean, theoretically, anybody could make it worse.
But theoretically, almost anybody can make it better.
Yeah, for sure.
Also, Zack Snyder does have a tendency to do really, really well with other people's shit. And I'm not going to talk about him. So do you guys know who Bill Moseley is? Like, do y'all know what other movies he's in?
I believe he's in stuff like House of a Thousand Corpses and those kind of films with Rob Zombie, right?
He pretty much plays the same freak. He was in, like, there was a Texas Chainsaw. I think he was in Texas Chainsaw 2. He was not in the original, I don't believe. Could be wrong. But yes, he was definitely in House of a Thousand Corpses. And this is another piece of media. Please don't hate. Please don't, dox me or send me death threats. House of a Thousand Corpses is one of my favorite movies. And it was challenging, just like Repo was challenging for me to watch. I saw House of a Thousand Corpses in the theater when it came out. And the entire time, you could have put a piece of coal in my ass and I would have turned it into a diamond. I was on the edge of my seat. When the credits rolled, you could hear the entire theater going, oh, like they were just so glad that it was over. Like, not because, well, and this is my interpretation, for me, not because it was a bad movie, but because I was fucking terrified. But that movie is also it's artsy fartsy, I think. And Bill Moseley plays pretty much the same kind of like unhinged, incoherent, batshit weirdo. And I don't even think you need to write lines for Mr. Moseley at this point. I think you can just yes, you can just set him loose in a room and be like, act like a nut, and he will. So that movie, House of a Thousand Corpses, did have bad acting, but it came together in a way that really stood out to me, like really affected me. This, I feel like Repo was trying to achieve that. I'm curious now to know what year House came out.
I believe it was pre this film.
2003.
That's what I find very interesting about this film, because they have some like major people. Like, how the fuck did they afford some of them? You know what I mean? And people who are at least like semi-famous. And then they got fucking Joan Jett. I know she's in there for like 30 seconds, but still, what the hell?
Why, Joan? Why?
Yeah. And Sarah Brightman is pretty, well, I mean, more if you're into musicals, but she's like semi-famous, right? And she is known for being like a very good singer, right? And so like, I'm just so surprised when you like, and like, how could she not have gotten onto the set and been like, this is below me? Like, I know that's so mean, but like,
I mean, I guess sometimes a paycheck is a paycheck.
I guess. I just don't understand.
When I say I feel sorry for some of the actors and actresses, I'm like, what were you going through, man? But yeah, I almost feel like Repo was trying super, super hard to be a mixture between House of a Thousand Corpses and Moulin fucking Rouge. And it tried so hard that it actually like garnered my rage. I will tell you, though, I did find things that I liked about it. It had its quirky little moments. I did like the scene between Shiloh and her dad, Nathan. Wow, I've got to couch this with another fuck up, you guys. I'm sorry. This movie didn't get out of its own way.
Yeah.
They tell you, here's daughter and here's daddy. And then like literally 5 seconds later, they're like, guess what? Plot twist. Dad is the repo man. You could have had me at the end of the movie. Well, close to the end of that movie. Definitely not 5 minutes later. You could have had me going, oh, shit, with the reveal that Shiloh's dad is the repo man. But they were like, yep, you heard that right, folks.
Well, and I think there are benefits to both ways. But part of the thing is I don't think they did this way very well. So like Shiloh is kind of our main character, but you could argue that Nathan is our second main character, right? It's like the two of them because a big part of it is about their relationship. But, and I'm gonna say it is one song that I think fucking ruins it, and it is Thankless Job. And I think it ruins Nathan's character altogether.
Because he's so like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde about it?
Yes. Because if you did not have Thankless Job where they show he actually enjoys doing this, he is a significantly more, and I think that sort of quote unquote twist at the end that I think is sort of dumb, but I think that means more when you don't know he has this horrible darker side. Like if he felt like it was just necessary for him to be the Repo Man, that he had no real way out of that, it is a much different feeling when it reveals that he is poisoning his daughter, right? Because at least up until now, you have seen him as exclusively a sympathetic character.
One of the kind of quirky and kind of funny scenes that I did like was it was the scene where Nathan had a guy hanging upside down and he was getting ready to just slice his spine open and repossess the spine. And Shiloh is somewhere else during all of this. She's not at home like she's supposed to be. She's not in her little like plastic covered bubble bed.
Yeah, she's like out at the press conference with Meg.
Yeah. So Nathan basically calls her on their little holographic wrist phones and he's like, "It's your medicine time." And she's like, "Yeah, I got it." And he's like, "Hey, what was that sound? Where the fuck are you?"
And then the guy gurgles.
Yeah. And then she's like, "Where the fuck are you? What the fuck are you doing?" I did like that.
Yeah.
And he was like, "Oh, shit."
Well, and I think that's a kind of a nice scene because it is like, oh, they are hiding each other. It's one of the few times that they are very successful, like where it is an interesting scene and it is sort of showing that they are both hiding something from each other, which is great. And again, shows Nathan in a more sympathetic light as well.
A very normal parent thing to do.
And to hide things about yourself that are negative to your child. That's totally normal. Like a lot of people do that. I mean, like, not that I think that their relationship is ever perfectly healthy, even if we didn't have, you know, Nathan much less sympathetic with Thankless Job, but it makes other songs not make sense. So Thankless Job shows he loves killing and he thinks it's fun, right? And then they have the song when the Largo kids and Roddy are all goading him into taking Meg's life, and kind of they have a guy there that also needs to be repossessed. And the idea is that they're kind of like goading him into like, you have to do this. You are the monster, blah, 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 blah. But Thankless Job already came up. So we know he is the monster. So why does he have qualms now? What are they convincing him of?
It was almost a guilt thing, I want to say. I'm giving it too much credit.
Yeah. I get that it's a guilt thing, but it's also like, who is Mag 2 really? You were going to let somebody else do it. You aren't going to help her. You refuse to help her. So what's the difference?
This is Love's best friend. He just can't do it.
That he kept from his daughter, she's supposed to be her god. Like, these things are very incongruent. Okay, without Thankless Job, Nathan is more sympathetic. So their whole goading thing, him into doing something he like really fucking doesn't want to do, right? It's more impactful, I feel like, because they're saying like, you are a monster. You are. They're convincing him. Whereas if Thankless Job is there, he doesn't exactly have to be convinced that he's a monster. He knows.
Right. He already convinced us.
They thought that some things would go over people's head. So they repeat stuff to make sure you get it.
He's a monster. He's a monster. But I prefer the idea. And I think it would have been better if you are sympathetic to him through a majority of the movie. Because that scene, if Thankless Job did not happen, that scene is so sad. Like, and it's heartbreaking with him accepting, like, I'm a monster. I can never not be a monster. And I have to do this thing I desperately don't want to do. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
For sure. It made it sort of like, it made it null and void.
Right. It negated the effect.
Yeah.
Yeah. You just lose a lot, I think, by doing that.
At least to an adult audience, I can understand where like a teenager would really, really love this movie. Like, would consider it the next Rocky Horror. Now, I've never seen Rocky Horror, but in bolstering my nerves to watch this movie, which I found out I really didn't need to do. I did read a lot of reviews and they were either like 10 stars, this is amazing, this is groundbreaking, I love it. Or it was like 1 star, I can't believe you guys are leaving 10 stars. And I feel like for a little goth kid, this is great. Like, this is everything they want to see. This is everything they want to hear. And they can look past, they're not analyzing it the way people who have seen more films and maybe read more books have
consumed a little bit more.
Yes.
And experienced more in life as well. I think it's interesting, though, because even if you can't understand necessarily, especially because we don't in schools in the US at least teach much about media literacy. So the thing is, even though you're not able to analyze it, you're as a teenager, the worst thing about that is that you are going to be absorbing the messages regardless. And the messages in this movie are kind of harmful. Let's be honest.
They're pretty bad.
Yeah. And so I think that's the unfortunate part, is that you might love this because of like these backdrop things and how it's edgy and it's spooky. And that's probably why I enjoyed it before, because it was spooky. And I was also, even though I was older, I was technically an adult, was not very media literate at that point in time. Because let's be honest, we're all old and the internet was not quite as big when we were younger.
This is true. Yeah, I asked myself if I would have liked this movie when I was 15 or 16. And I can't tell you, like, I don't know the answer to that because part of me was very, oppositional, defiant. And I was like, I want to be shocking and off-putting to people. But the other part of me was like a little D&D kid that, was adjusting my glasses and going, well, according to my calculations, I almost feel like even as a kid, I would have intellectualized this movie to death to the point where I was like, bullshit, but I don't know. I do not know.
I mean, I think that's part of what this podcast is about, right? Like, these are things that we at one point really loved, usually when we did not have the critical eye that we now do. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. Like 2008 kind of seems like a couple of months ago to me. So I do have to sort of ask myself, especially if we're going to continue to do these early aughts and media, I've got to put on the nostalgia glasses and look at and give it the benefit of the doubt through my teenage self. And I had a tough time with this one. I couldn't just say, oh, yeah, I get it. When I was 15, I would have been so into this. I don't know. I was so challenged by this movie.
I think it is very possible you would not have felt that way.
Drew, you saw this when it came out?
Yeah.
And you were like, here for it? No judgment, because I can't decide whether or not I would have been here for it.
Yeah. Like I said, I was 17 and I was edgy then.
You were target demo. Okay.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
An emo kid.
Okay. So that checks out. I, however, not the target.
I will say, though, like, I was a little bit older. I was in college and I went to college for like 6 or 7 years because I went part-time. And, I was a big old fan of this film. Also, I was in my early 20s, I must have been. And yeah, I still liked it because I think back to myself at the time and how uncritical I think I was about things. And I had not learned a lot about still, even though I was in college, even though I was working and I was quote unquote out in the world, I wasn't that way. And that is the thing. And now I do understand why I was into it. I loved spooky things at the time. In fact, I wore my My Chemical Romance hoodie to the show, and I hate to admit this, but I used to be kind of a pick-me girl at the time too. So I thought it was funny if I made jokes about women that were negative because it was me, a woman, saying it. This is how I was. I was too old to be acting like this, I would argue, but I did. And being able to recognize those sort of negative things about myself, I understand why I did not think about this movie that critically. I accepted these sort of things that I'm criticizing now, right? I accepted these backdrops of edginess because I didn't have a lot of nuance thought about some of these subjects, about sex work, about body dysmorphia, about addiction, about class disparity.
You have years of listening to other people in between the time that you might have enjoyed this movie and the present.
Yeah.
And also there's a personal experience. Yeah. I could compare Repo to so many different pieces of media.
Some of the songs in this sounded really familiar to me. And I think I just realized what I feel like I heard them from.
Where?
Some of them sound like songs from Sweeney Todd.
Another movie I haven't seen in years. And I think I've only seen it once. Are you talking about, it's got Johnny Depp and
yeah.
Helena Bonham Carter.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. And Sweeney Todd was out for a long time before this. So, but I mean, like, the thing is, like, of course it's going to be familiar, right? Like, it is meant to sound like specific kinds of music, right?
I don't know if it's because of influence or if that's just how this kind of thing sounds. Musicals, well, this is not a musical, but they're kind of in the same vein, though. So if that's just a thing for this genre of movie. And I don't watch too many of these kinds of movies myself. I watch Sweeney Todd, and I like Sweeney Todd a lot, but I don't watch too many of these kind of movies.
Like musicals?
Yeah, musicals.
I watch a lot because the theater is expensive, so it is a little bit out of my reach most of the time. But so I only consume things that I can get fairly mass made. But I do watch a lot. It seemed almost like when I saw this, I saw one interview, so I don't know if this like kept happening, but the kind of insistence that it isn't a musical, that it's an opera, felt a little like shitting on musicals, which is like, you basically are a musical. An opera and a musical are not that different, really. Realistically, I know stylistically they tend to be like quite different, but they're not that different in terms of like what they are. And opera, I think, only gets this idea about being like high class is because it's like not American culture. Culturally, it is like Italian mostly and,
Right.
other European languages and stuff like that. And because Broadway and musicals are more of an American invention, I think that's why it's looked at as like lower class.
This movie needs to chill the fuck out. Also, because the music wasn't that great, fam. The whole reason that I shared with you guys that Lordy song last night, because that's what I was expecting. Now, Lordy is another entity that confuses me, and I'm not like, a tremendous fan of them or whatever. But when I heard the words rock opera, I was expecting like some 80s adjacent power ballads and some like choirs and like thick fucking guitar riff. I was expecting music that was going to move my ass. And a lot of it was just like dirges. It was and some of it was peppy, but the majority of it just felt like these drawn out chanted dirges. And it really let me down. I was expecting the music to be the best part about this, and it ended up being, I don't even know, like, is it the worst? Tough question.
I mean, I think a rock opera is always a little bit hard to do. Those are such different things technically, but it can be done. You know what I mean? It's been done.
Better than this.
Yes.
I have that whole Lordy album saved somewhere, and I think I remember it. I think they did an okay job of it. That was my expectation. So yeah, music let me down. Acting let me down. The lyrics let me down so bad, to the point where I was almost like gaslighting myself. Like, maybe this is how an opera is supposed to be. It had some fun parts.
Yeah.
But man,
I don't know if you do the thing I do with the subtitles, but I do think upon a first watching, it is actually kind of hard to get everything that's being said. And I know particularly there's one part where it's because there's the scene when Mag comes over to Shiloh and Nathan's house. And at first she sings with Shiloh and then she's singing with Nathan. And then it's Nathan and Shiloh. They're singing things like the words they are singing are somewhat expositional, especially when they're talking about the past, but they are singing over each other.
yes.
So it can be very difficult to catch what it is anyone is saying. And it's like, that is a normal thing in musicals specifically. Again, I'm not as familiar with operas where they do a thing where people are singing over each other, but it's almost always not expositional. And frequently it has to do with the chorus and kind of singing the chorus at different times or like different parts that are repeating. I don't know enough about music, but it'll be like reprisal from maybe another song sometimes or whatever. It is almost never, because it makes no fucking sense to have exposition in a song where people are singing over each other.
I did watch it with the subtitles on. And girl, let me tell you, there were several points in time where the caption said, parentheses, inaudible, close parentheses. Literally, I'm not fucking making that up.
Sometimes the words were wrong as well, I noticed.
The words were wrong and they were off key. Oh, I could go on and on about this.
But like the subtitles would say a song where I'm like, that is not what they're saying. There's a part where they're saying mark it up over and over again. And I forget what it said, but it did not say mark it up.
Oh, my subtitle said mark it up.
Which platform did you watch it on?
I watched it on Pluto.
Oh, I watched mine on Amazon Prime.
Damn, I didn't know that.
But I don't usually watch movies with subtitles.
What?
And that might be why I didn't know for the first part of the movie that Pavi's name was Pavi.
What do you think his name was?
I didn't know because...
Yeah. They don't say it very often either. And I think that is the thing about the movie in general, is that upon one watching, it can be actually kind of difficult to catch everything that's happening because they are cramming a lot in and not exploring any of it that well or that much. And let's be honest, Pavi and Luigi could have been one character.
This is true.
Well, but then you couldn't have feuding brothers.
Yeah, but it would just be Amber competing with one brother.
But they had to have one stabby, angry freak, and they had to have one face peeled off freak.
But it would be the same.
I guess they thought that'd be too much for one character.
Yeah, he'd be one person who did both of those things.
And also, one of them was Italian.
Yeah, Pavi.
But the other two were
they all
not.
have the Italian name.
Yeah, it makes no sense. There's so much that does not make sense in this movie.
I guess they decided not to do Italian accents, but he was like, I can do it, even though no one else was doing it.
Yeah, maybe it's supposed to be some sort of implication that they all have different mothers. I don't know.
No, you're giving it too much credit. This entire thing feels like a fan fiction, a poor fan fiction.
In some ways, I wish that like all of the Largos just like didn't exist in this movie, because I do think the best parts are Alexa Vega, Sarah Brightman, and Anthony Stewart Head. Those three are the best thing about this movie.
Agreed.
You know, and like I said, they're doing too much. Like if it was this story about their relationship and what's going on and how they're hiding things from each other, that's like one entire story, right?
They could have completely wrapped the whole glowing blue drug thing.
Yeah.
And it would have had zero impact.
Oh, yeah.
But once again, one of them came up with it, and the other one was like, yeah, let's put that in.
Fuck yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's so cool. Oh, Shiloh's nightgown in the beginning, like you can almost see her vagina.
See, I didn't notice this shit.
And okay, I think what they're trying to show in this is like, quote unquote, or at least this is their reasoning, is that like, oh, her dad treats her like a kid, so he hasn't bought her like a new nightgown. And it's like, no, it's because you wanted to see Alexa Vega's ass because she was 19, so she was quote unquote legal, right? Like, there's no way that's not really why it is.
Yeah, put her ass in Blue's Clues next time around.
Or just make her dress like an inch or two longer because, like, you know, okay, I don't like Taylor Swift. We've talked about this, but I've heard a lot of her songs because my husband loves it. But there's that song where she says, I'm the problem, it's me. But there's a part where she says, I feel like everyone's a sexy baby. And that just for some reason popped in my head when I saw her in that little nightgown, because they like infantilize her in a lot of ways. And so it's like, oh, she's got to be a sexy baby.
They do. You are not kidding. The whole time I was like, she's going on and on about how she's like, I'm 17, Dad. Wah, wah, wah. It was very whiplash inducing. They purposefully designed this character to be like goo goo gaga. However, the whole thing with her side boob and the whole thing with her crotch shoving in the nightgown, I did not pick up on that. I must be a truly good person.
Yeah, same here.
Tend to hyper focus on costuming, to be fair.
No, I've no attention disease.
Like a quarter of my notes is just me talking about clothing.
That checks out.
Like when Blind Mag is in that green dress, like press conference dress, where it's got kind of the plunging neckline thing. And it's like a shimmery green, gorgeous dress. I feel like I remember reading something before about how that was actually just Sarah Brightman's dress. Like it was her own dress from home. And
I hope it's true.
I think that's the case because I remember also hearing that, you know, the costume that Amber is wearing when she goes to meet Grave Robber that first time where Shiloh's out with them.
Yes.
The bra she's wearing that's all bejeweled was actually Paris Hilton's. Like, it was hers. That's the thing. They didn't have a great budget. So, like, I'm not surprised.
What a pick for that role.
I mean, I get it a little bit because she's playing a caricature of what she was perceived like at the time.
Yeah. Do you think she thought it? Do you think she was like, Am I being made fun of?
No, I think she knew. I think she knew and she was playing into it, honestly, because I remember her doing that a lot at the time.
Okay.
She had already done Simple Life, which was kind of that same thing, right? Because I don't know if you remember the very infamous line, "What's Walmart? Do they sell walls?"
I had forgotten, but thank you.
And she later on had admitted, like, that was for the show. Like, I know what Walmart is.
It's the meme of her eating a Powerpuff Girls ice cream. And she's like, give me one more of these blonde bitches or something like that.
But I'm just saying, like, I do think that she knew this persona that was being put out about her. And I think she played into it and she thought it was funny. I think it was purposeful. And she was doing some acting at the time like that. Definitely, I think, was her focus at the time because she had done House of Wax, I think, a few years before then.
Yep, 2005.
And she had already put out her album, Stars Are Blind. I actually kind of like Paris Hilton. I don't like her because she's a billionaire, and I hate billionaires.
I used to work at a perfume shop at an outlet mall, and we got a life-size cardboard cutout of Paris Hilton when her perfume dropped. And it was standing right behind the cash register. And whenever people would come check out with me, they would be like, oh, is that you? Ha ha ha. And I was like, really? I was not offended.
Yeah.
Like,
she's beautiful. And like, I think the reason and like the hate she got a lot was because of this persona. And that's not 100% fair, I don't think.
This was also the era of Megan Fox hate. And yeah. I really do just want to chalk it up to internalized misogyny.
Oh, for sure.
Clothes. Yeah, the end. That was easy.
Well, and that was sort of what I was saying about myself at that time, where I feel like that was me. I had a lot of internalized misogyny. I would not have been able to call out any of the stuff that's I feel is misogynistic in this film back then because I was in the sauce at the time. So,
yep.
There's also a doll of her from Rainbow High that I really do want, but it's really expensive now because I didn't get it when it first came out.
Of Megan Fox or Paris Hilton?
Paris Hilton, yeah, because she was on the Rainbow High show. They made like a 3D model of her and she looks like the Rainbow High dolls, but it's Paris Hilton. It's very cute. And she like judges a fashion contest, I think, or something. It's really very cute.
Shit, I wish they had a Megan Fox one. She'd be badass.
I don't know. She's fucking weird.
Yeah, about Repo. About the clothes. One thing I really did like was the Repo Man costume.
Yeah, they did a good job with that.
It took me a while to realize that his headpiece, like his helmet or mask or whatever, was like a doctor's mask and a doctor's goggle. Yeah. Once I realized that, I was like, oh, that's cute.
Well, I think that's his weapon, too, is like a giant scalpel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like a naginata scalpel.
Yeah.
It's wild, you guys. This movie is just unhinged. And I don't hate it.
Yeah.
And it was an experience. I will say, I don't think that you could lie about having seen this movie. Like if you were to walk into a conversation and people were like, oh, you know, in that part of Repo, the genetic opera, no one could just be like, oh yeah, I seen that. You're fucking lying. Well, she would have made some kind of weird noise.
Yeah, it's funny because I brought this up. I have therapy on Fridays, which is the time that we are recording. And so I brought it up in therapy because like I just generally, because it's on my mind because it's the same day. And I brought it up in therapy and I wasn't saying the name of the movie. And she was like, do you mind if I ask what movie it is? And I told her and she started laughing. And I was like, so you are aware. And she's like, yeah, no, I have a lot of friends who, you know, feel the same way you do, where like you loved it at one point, you watched it, it really doesn't hold up like at all. And she's like, that's why I don't actually want to rewatch it because I'm like, I don't think I would enjoy it.
It's that psychic damage.
I love the fact that you just used a D&D term in the podcast.
Psychic damage.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was the pocket protector kid that was just totally overanalyzing everything and poking holes in everything. But the other part of me was I had the wool pulled over my eyes with pick-meism and internalized misogyny. And it actually even wasn't a thing that I knew existed until I was in my 30s. Yeah, it's nice. It's good to look back on things like this and go, aren't we cool? Aren't we great right now? Aren't we beautiful beings? This made us feel so much better about ourselves. And you know what? We fucking deserve it. That's fine. I'm going to revel.
Because we're old.
Yeah. Thank you, Drew. Thank you.
You're
I
welcome.
did want to go back to I did want to go back to the costume for 1 second. The Geneco security guards uniforms were the funniest thing in the world. Slicked back ponytail, dark blue lipstick, suit top.
They were called gin turns.
Oh, I'm not talking about the gin turns, which that's a whole nother thing. I'm talking about like Roddy has these 2 female security guards behind him a lot of the time, and they have like guns.
Yeah.
Yeah, their uniform includes fishnets, slicked back ponytails, blue lipstick, like these like little satin short things. So funny.
They need to be in like a Robert Palmer video. They're just so... I was very intimidated by them, but I loved the little sexy twins. I hated them also, but I loved them equally. Very weird addition to that. What am I saying? Perfect addition to that movie.
It's all weird. So one thing I mentioned, and again, I don't think this movie even, when writing this movie, I don't think they even thought of this, right? But on top of that, like, there's so much crammed into this movie, they were never going to do it anyways. Blind Meg signed a contract with her best friend's boyfriend at the time that basically made her into a slave. And she wasn't mad at Marnie.
You can poke holes in this shit all day long.
Yeah.
Yep.
Why does Nathan unknowingly poisoning his own wife make him obligated to Roti?
I think it's so that he doesn't go to jail is sort of the idea. Like, I think that he was illegally testing his medicines on his wife.
But you got Luigi out here just shanking folks left and right.
But he's rich.
Oh, you have opened my eyes. Okay.
Yeah. That I think is the point with the children of being so quote unquote depraved, because I don't really count Amber amongst the depraved, but them being so depraved is that like they basically get away with anything, which begs the question, if they get away with anything, why does Amber not just have a script for Zydrate from a doctor, like a shady quack?
Just give it to her ass. You're completely right.
She gets away with everything, or that's sort of the implication, that the 3 of them get away with everything. If they can get away with everything, why can't she, like get a prescription?
Because then the scene with Grave Robber wouldn't exist.
Right.
And Terrence Zadunich wanted to hump Paris Hilton. So there is, I believe, a deleted scene in which they're like humping, basically. I mean, there's a little bit of it in the actual movie, but it was like a full ass scene.
There was a flash of a humping scene, like leg locked over the back. I was like, get it, girl.
Okay, this might be my own moral judgment and that it's not fair for me to say this, but you saved the unborn child and not the woman who you've lived with and loved.
Wow.
What the fuck?
Think of that.
He says in the song, because I've watched this movie twice recently, I chose, and I wonder if I chose wrong. Bitch, yes, you did.
Oh, I did see it. It just didn't dawn on me. This is why I need other people to watch movies with me, because I was just like, okay, whatever. Like, I'm just going through the motions of getting to the credit. And yeah, wow.
Again, this is my own morality about that. Like, this is a woman who has a whole life that will affect many people by her leaving versus a child, which I'm not saying that there's no value in an unborn baby, but I do think that there is a lot more value in someone who has a full life already. And maybe this is my pro-choice stance going on here, but like,
say it.
It's a fucked up thing to do when you have someone who doesn't really exist yet, right? And then you have someone who does exist and has touched many people's lives, has their whole life, and you chose the one that's not alive yet?
That hasn't experienced misery. So did the movie frame it? Because I don't remember this. I mean, I remember the scene that you're talking about, but I don't remember the specific element. Did the movie frame it like he had to pick? Like it was a Batman episode?
Yeah, it did. Because if in the song, he outright says that he had to choose between the two.
Hang on. I might need to rewatch. No, I'm definitely not going to. Someone hold my hand through this.
I had to watch the second time with my husband, so.
Oh, God. He was accidentally poisoning his own wife, right? Without knowing it.
I don't think he was continuously doing it. I think he was testing out medications to try and help with whatever disease, and it was killing her. It outright says it. I'll see if I can find the lyrics to it.
Don't bother. This movie is like the sympathy that I feel around it. It's like the scene from The Office where Kevin is spilling the chili all over the place. And he's talking about like, I roasted these ancho peppers for 5 hours. And this is a recipe that was handed down over generations, blah, blah, blah. And meanwhile, what you're seeing on screen is this poor man dying as he's cleaning up chili off of the office floor. I feel that same way about this movie and everyone involved. I'm just like, oh, you poor thing.
Like Kevin's chili?
I'm just like, oh.
So funny.
He thinks it's so good, but here he is scraping it up off the floor like an animal. Oh, no, he dropped it again. Oh, God. Like, yeah, there's pity. Really quickly, what is everyone's most hated movie franchise? Go, 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 go. I'll start. It's The Purge.
I don't watch movies I don't like most of the time, except for this show.
It happens on accident.
Mine is the Fast franchise.
Okay, good answer.
I've never seen any of those either.
Really?
I haven't seen a single one.
Good for you.
Because I can tell I won't like them, so I didn't watch them.
Okay. Well, nothing gets on my critic goggles quite like The Purge. And I will say, I did not hate this movie as much as I hated The Purge.
Well, that's something at least.
Yeah, that's my standard. Congratulations, The Purge.
Why can Nathan fight so good?
Yeah, I'm telling you,
He's a doctor.
he is whipping that weapon around like a pole axe. He's just like...
He's good with his scalpel.
Well, yeah, with the scalpel itself, but then there's a part where Roddy is looking for him because he refused to kill Megs, and he figures out that Shiloh is going to the opera, and then he goes into some sort of underground tunnel or something, but these guys from Gene Co. are coming after him, and he, like, fights them.
He was, like, snapping their necks and stuff, wasn't he? He was, like, roundhouse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's a part where he's trying to catch somebody, he, like, jumps down off a building or whatever. Like, he's like Batman, but he's just a doctor.
I guess you gotta be physically fit to be a Repo Man.
I guess, like, he learned it with time, but, like, people must have fought so hard when he started.
He reminded me of Nicolas Cage in Kick-Ass. Have you guys seen that movie?
Yes. And Kick-Ass too.
Yes.
I like that movie. Nicolas Cage is like this very unassuming, very mild seeming daddy. And I can't remember the girl, Chloe something.
Grace Moretz.
Thank you. It is like his 11-year-old daughter. And he's like, okay, baby, now it's time to learn how to use the switchblade knife. And she's like, he's so totally badass, but he's just sort of like playing this sort of mild-mannered PTA dad. They did it better, but that was sort of reminiscent of that performance to me.
Yeah, I mean, because it particularly works in both cases because they are hiding their identities for different reasons. And I mean, like I was talking about the costumes before, they do a good job with that. When he is just Nathan, he looks like, you know, a comfy dad.
Yeah, exactly.
The fucking opera hymnal at the end, where for some reason there's a part where the Gen-turns are just humping each other on stage in bikinis, I guess, basically. Although it looks kind of like they were wearing diapers, I'll be honest. And then the lady who's like, look how hot I am because I got kidneys. And I'm like, why are you showing your boobs? I don't understand what's happening.
Oh, no. She didn't have kidneys. She didn't get kidneys. She might have had kidneys. She didn't get them. She was like, look at me, I'm a MILF. And now look how perfect my body is. Whoosh.
But she says that Gene Co's so great because they gave her new kidneys. And now look how awesome I am. And I'm like, what?
Never mind.
Well, that's what the hymnal partially is about, like celebrating Gene Co. And I think they're trying to say something about worshiping the dollar, worshiping corporations as if they were a religion. Maybe.
Vanity was also very heavily condemned. Just excessively.
It's equated to being the same thing as like murder. Yeah, I understand.
and beat a dead fucking horse with the whole vanity thing. And it was directed towards women and what I think, question mark, might have been a feminine coded man. I don't know what to think anymore. The guy with the face onto his own face.
Javi. It's particularly interesting because Darren and Terrence, I believe, both of them worked on 2 other films together that was called, I believe, The Devil's Carnival. And then there was like a sequel to it. I don't remember exactly what the name is. And I know that in those, they do something kind of similar in that they equate things that are clearly not the same. And I know the concept behind it has to do with like people are in hell and they're being basically given a second chance, right, to like undo their sins or whatever. And I know they do the same thing where they're equating things that are like, this is the most misogynistic thing you could possibly say, man, because this is not the same. Like, I know one of the people is punished because she is a victim of a domestic abuse and then picks somebody else in hell who also would abuse her.
Heavens.
Yeah. And a guy basically gets put in hell because he commits suicide. Yeah. And they're being sort of equated to other things that are actually like bad. I can't remember what the other things are. I just remember hearing those 2 and going, fuck you guys, you are the worst. So it seems like when these things are coming up, it doesn't, because of those other examples, it's like, you believe these things actually.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it wasn't an accident. It wasn't because you're kind of a dum-dum and don't understand things, which some of the stuff going on is because they're kind of dum-dums and don't understand stuff. But some of it is like, oh, you just have really horrific beliefs about people.
The whole vanity thing was definitely a red flag. It was very sort of...
They make it so that someone who, with the things that they write, clearly has some sort of dysmorphia, right? Like, some of the things she fucking says, clearly Amber Sweet has some sort of dysmorphia going on, right? And they're pretending that it's just vanity. And it's like, okay, but are you listening to the things you actually wrote?
Right. It's almost like you wrote something so profound and then in the next second you shat on it.
Because you didn't even get what you were saying. That's what I think. That's the thing. I don't think you got what you were doing. You don't understand.
Yeah.
It's just, I feel frustrated with this movie a lot, you know, and I think because it feels like something that has like, yeah. It feels like something that has some pretty good potential. It just squanders it all.
Well, and it all goes back to the whole thing with the reviews. There was either 1-star reviews. If you read the reviews on this movie, it's baffling. There are either 1-star or 10-star. And you're just like, oh, honey, to the 10-star ones. You're just like, let's rock talk a little bit. Like, what's going on with you? Who are you? What are you about? What made you
like this?
Well, what made you like this? And not only what made you want to tell other people this is prime media. Like, I read reviews where people were like, I have listened to the soundtrack of this nonstop with my friends. And I'm like, girl, what? The soundtrack was one of the worst things.
People who are neurodivergent sometimes, to be fair, will get attached to something that they repeat, to be fair. I just want to be a little bit fair on that point. But I guess I get where you're coming from, though, in general, too, because it's like, it does feel baffling with people not seeing it. But then again, like, I did not see any of it before.
I have no prior exposure.
Even with that, even with being so young and stuff, I wouldn't have given it full stars, even how much I liked it.
Well, you know, there's also people who fall in love with serial killers. So, you know, to each their own.
Fine.
I guess. I don't know. I feel like we've kind of done Repo to death at this point. Is there anything you guys want to kind of wrap up on, and we can do our yes and no nostalgias afterwards?
About the FX, I loved and at the same time really laughed at Blind Mag's eyes.
Oh, they were terrifying.
They were partially contacts and then partially, you know, FX, which is the way to go. I think technically because of that, it is one of the FX that is not quite as bad as some of the other ones. They're not awesome.
But the whole projection thing from them, though, was pretty bad.
Yeah. The eyes themselves, not such a problem. But yeah, and I mean, like, some of this stuff doesn't feel gory because, again, the SFX is not good.
Very cheesy. I was worried.
Yeah.
When I saw the Saw word on the movie poster, I was very concerned for my own safety. So I did a deep dive. And then I found that some people were like, yeah, this is badass. And then I was like, okay, I'm okay. But some of the gore scenes, especially like there's one scene where he's like ripping out a stomach and it just looks like he's ripping out a big old chunk of bubblegum. It was when somebody tossed them a brain and they tossed the brain into a scale and it bounced like a water balloon. And I was like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm good. I'm good.
Rain, mark it up.
A lot of the gore is not bad because like I don't generally, even then I didn't love like gory movies too much. So yeah, like the worst thing I can even think of is when Mags like pokes out her own eyes.
Because you'd rather be blind.
Yeah, and that wasn't even that bad. Oh, did you want to know the translation for her aria or whatever it is at that part?
Yes. Her Italian part of the song?
Yeah.
Lay it on us.
Okay. Once upon a time, an ill-fated bird named Chromagia encountered an archer's arrow while flying off the lava coasts. For years thinking itself being chased, it fled the arrow. Chromagia, Chromagia, why don't you face the danger? The arrow was tied to its wing, and it flew trying to escape it. Carrying this arrow, others are hurt, and it's my fault. My fault. Down towards the devil's mouth. His arrow is my eyes. Chromagia, come take these eyes. I would rather be blind. That part at the end is in English, but...
And that line was a hitter.
Yeah. I mean, like, again, one of the better scenes because Sarah Brightman is one of the best things about the movie.
Don't get me wrong. There are some parts of this movie that I'm just like, yeah. Like, I'm cool with it.
Yeah.
It's something else.
Yeah. It's quite the film. All right. Are we ready to give our yes or no's?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. I'll go first. I'm going to give this a nostalgia. Unless you really fucking love this kind of thing, there is really no reason for you to watch it. Like, it is a cult kind of favorite a little bit, but like I said, it seems like a lot of people revisit it and are not such big fans. And I don't think you're technically missing out on anything if you don't see it. You can watch some clips on YouTube if you really want, and that's going to give you good enough. But otherwise, like, yeah, it's just so messy. So yeah, nostalgia for me.
For me, it's also a nostalgia. And I kind of want to knock my past self in the head for this. Like, what was I thinking? Yeah.
Is that it for you?
Yeah.
Okay. So now it's my turn, right?
Yeah.
I will say, Drew, thank you. Because I don't even know how to put this. In my personal life and in my personal situations and in my personal tragedies, I tend to not feel very much. And I am a single parent of a 3-year-old. So all of what I get to consume is Blue's Clues, Paw Patrol, blah, 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 blah. So for me to be sort of dropped into this, when you have ADHD, there's an urgency when you have a deadline. So when I know that Friday's coming up and that we're going to record, I'm like, I gotta watch this movie. So I do when I otherwise wouldn't. And I will say this was humanizing for me to watch this boiling hot ass nuclear wreck of a movie. And I can think of worse movies than this, but they still didn't give me the same juice that this movie gave me to rant and rave and talk about and have opinions on. I've seen some shit ass movies and I'm just like, whatever, bad movie. This was like, oh, I can't wait for Friday. I have got some shit to tell them. That in itself, Drew, is a gift to a person like me. So I'm going to say nostalgia on this one, simply because I was 20-something when it came out, but also because I cannot say that 15-year-old me wouldn't have been like, wow, what horrible writing. Like, I would have analyzed this to death. I would have totally foregone the misogyny. I would have totally foregone all of the alienating elements of this film. And I would have been like, oh, the songs are written poorly. Like, I would have nerded out on this in a bad way. So yeah, that's my piece.
Would you like to, before we finish, mention any piece of media you've currently been enjoying?
Sure. I'll go first.
Please.
I might start this as a trend for this. I'm going to do an anime and a non-anime. I've been watching the Netflix Shaman King series. It's much like the Shaman King series from 4Kids, but it's closer to the manga than the 4Kids show was. For those who don't know, in Shaman King, mostly kids, there are some adults, but mostly kids combat with spirits to see who's going to be the Shaman King, role the fate of the world.
I'm about to ask a question. This still won't narrow it down, but there's like a kid with white hair and blue eyes, and there's a kid with like black spiky hairs. I didn't narrow.
I think you might be thinking of Soul Eater, but maybe I'm wrong. I just remember there's two masculine looking kids, and then there's a girl with blonde hair. Okay. Either way. Drew, would you like to go your second?
The other thing I'm watching non-anime is Lopez versus Lopez. George Lopez's show with his actual daughter, where they play father and daughter on the show. Estranged father and daughter, as they were in real life.
Okay.
I think I've seen advertising for that one, yeah. For me, I recently got, because I kickstarted it, the second collected Ava's Demon, which is normally a web series, so you can actually read it for free. But yeah, it's great. I really enjoy reading it. So yeah, that's what I've been. Because otherwise I've been watching Nerdy Prudes Must Die over and over again because it's my new comfort thing that I watch over and over again. Those are like the two things I've been consuming lately. Amanda?
All right. I'm going to bring it way back. I'm always several million years late to parties. I just listened to the very last episode of Improvised Star Trek, and I could listen to that shit 1,000 times over from front to back. It was great. It was amazing. I'm sad. It ran for 10 years. It was a podcast that ran for 10 years, and it ended in 2019. It ended in a very serendipitous time for something to end right before COVID. And yeah, I'm sad that I binged through it in about 2 or 3 months, but I will be listening to it again the entire way through.
Awesome. So this has been the Yestalgia podcast, and we'll see you next time.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.
It is better that you should rush upon this blade than enter this circle with fear in your heart. How do you enter?
With perfect love and perfect trust.